Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of live poetry streaming on Minneapolis Television Network. Tonight's poets are Charles Curry, Charly Mullan, Thomas R. Smith, and Laura Hansen. As usual, I'll start off reading a couple of my poems. First one is called Morning Glory. The morning glory wrapped sweetly around the grand sunflower, so I left it pleasantly entwined. Now the sunflower no longer gazes upward. Its head faces the dirt, its neck limp. See what the glory vines have done? Another case of beauty killing beauty. You wanted them to bloom together, but one drops and fails its duty. As the day moves into afternoon, the morning glory hides its elegance, not its stranglehold. And this one's called How Long Afloat. Sometimes my wife forgets she hates me. Not that the boat is filled with harmony, but rough waters arrive and it takes two to stay afloat. Sometimes my wife forgets she loves me. Something has been lost or misplaced, and she blames me for letting the boat drift down the wrong creek. More and more, she forgets the latter. Although if it looks like rain, she still tells me to carry an umbrella. Yet her voice carries a bit of disdain, indicating all she recollects. Our first poet reading tonight is Charles Patterson Curry. He is an original member of Nerve Poets, a running group that existed for 15 years. His work has appeared in the Martin Lake Journal, St. Paul Almanac, the Herald, Minnesota Zoo Tracks, EngageMN.com, the Moccasin, the Numdrum Engine Literary Review, Agates, and the Cracked Walnut Anthology, Rewaddling Hope. He received several prizes from the League of Minnesota Poets contest and first prize in a Poetry Month library contest sponsored by Dakota County. Charles' first book, That Which Is Near, uses memory and observation to explore the relationship of the temporal and the timeless. He's married with two grown children and two inquisitive and energetic granddaughters. Take it away, Charles.
All right, I've got two this evening. One is about my now grown-up children, and the other is about the topography around us. Watchdog. I'm not attached to things, although they do accumulate. Not just mine, children's projects too. A drawing of a tennis shoe, a musical biography of Walt Disney, a popsicle stick boat, the SS Dad, two gumball dispensers, one from each child. The memory of small faces happy with their projects might be enough to carry with me. But the one thing I can't leave behind is a white plush dog with floppy ears, alert on my nightstand's back corner. It's been there for 30 some years. Black button eyes always open, sitting at attention, red ribbon around its soft neck, red lace trimmed heart hanging from its mouth. My Valentine, it says. It was not a gift for that day. It was from my children, 2 and 6, because I needed to stay in bed without being crawled on. A stuffed dog was just the thing to guard me from harm. Its place on a crowded nightstand, its gray dust patina resists attempts to tidy up. Are you done with that yet? My wife asks. Someday, maybe, when I stop seeing solemn-faced children holding it up, anxiety and love in their round, coal black eyes. And this one's called Buckthorn, and it's about if you're aware of buckthorn, I'm sorry. If you're not aware of buckthorn, don't bother. It's a lovely thing. This is a one long poem. Buckthorn. Here's an epigram For every complex problem, there is a solution that is simple, straightforward, and wrong. That's H.L. Mencken. There is little native here. Only one thing I see started out here, sprang from the ground because it belonged. Though immutable clay unseen under grass has not moved, is not transformed, and trees, some old enough to be indigenous, one elm at least, preceded the farm this once was. But from clay and elms, a whole landscape is not made. There is nothing native here, not me, not the grass I rolled out, not the buckthorn thick around it, dark green leaves, copper-skinned stems. One immigrant contemplates another. It is useful to review genealogies born of inattention. We all quit sometimes, impatient. Who wants to master mechanics of soil erosion, organic imbalance? Buckthorn began wherever it began, hemmed in by weather or chewing creatures or other plants. Here it grows hysterically, greedy for all the light, all the soil. I understand none of it, yet am drawn in against time allotted for the arcane. The lawn's edge, a border beyond which no attention strayed. Too easy to focus on annual flats of petunias waiting for spring's last frost. Who noticed the genealogy of the woods beyond? Flat black land topping the clay begat the steel plow, begat turned over prairie, begat wind-pushed soil that begat buckthorn hedges, begat more buckthorn, and here it is, dense as now vanished prairie grass. Half-dead fountains, once graceful sprays of green, sheltering sprays, monochrome and dark. Pruning cannot restore it to itself. Each branch fights to a standstill, dies, tangled with another, only half alive. It won't fall down by itself or die completely or go away, and even the deer won't eat it. My own begats bring me to this place. Rich black earth called my grandparents, who could not hold my parents, who drifted to cities, or me who drifted here, or my children far away now, drifting on their own dreams, leaving me with voices now aged or dead that celebrate complexity, embrace hard questions, and that hear the wildflowers now silent. Another epigram. Then God said, let the earth produce fresh growth. Let there be on the earth plants bearing seed, fruit trees bearing fruit, each seed with seed according to its own kind. That's from Genesis. So it was spoken on the third day. We moved in more recently. Raspberries greeted us, hickory nuts, gooseberries, wild roses, and wildflowers. There were ferns and cedar trees, all among the poplar and the sumac and the elms. There was also buckthorn, or at least there was probably buckthorn, or at least we didn't plant any, or at least we didn't know. Since it was our own garden, lacking only a tree of wisdom, we said it was good just the way it was. Another epigram. Attractive berries all summer long, rapidly develops into narrow columns, thornless. This is an entry for buckthorn in an old grower's catalog. The woods were already dense in summers. We lived as in a deep woods cabin, even though there were neighbors enough from the very beginning. How good it was to be surrounded by thick leaves and green and green and green and yet another green. How good to not see what color the houses were, whether curtains were open, whether neighbors watched TV or us. How good to hear rain on leaves, the various green leaves, and windows open at night on the roof, rain in and on a different pitch. And thinking nature would nurture itself, We left it to grow as it would. Another epigram. Ecological threat. Exotic buckthorns tend to form dense, even-aged thickets, crowding and shading our out native shrubs and herbs, often completely obliterating them. That's from a horticultural website. What is it about time that changes things? Gathering data, perhaps, information from data, perhaps, hard experience, more likely. For decades, seductive dark green leaves, green early, still green when they drop, long after all else, working their strangling roots around everything, fewer greens than none but one. With snakeskin bark, copper when wet, foundational plant, fundamentalist plant, the one true plant with no other plant before it, leans for support on stronger, straighter trees, then greedy for light takes it all. Neither crabgrass nor sumac can break the root pack. Another epigram. Buckhorn's astrology is under the influence of Saturn. That's from an herbologist's website. Taskmaster of the zodiac, controller of bones and hard work, look on me now, dragging stalks of buckthorn, saw and poison close at hand. As the stump count grows, so does the outline of the neighboring house. An outbuilding we didn't know was there. The contour of the hillside emerges, geometries and topographies revealed. Are the oaks along the street really in a straight row after all? Lost toys are unearthed. Recovery. Raspberries come back. Wildflowers come back. Sumac emerges, but does not dominate. Its leaves so red in fall.
Thank you, Charlie. Next up, we have Charly Mullan, hailing originally from Minnesota and back in his old neighborhood of St. Paul. Charlie has created a more encompassing profile as a traveling Midwesterner, with fingers into landscapes of the other states and stories wandering along their roads. He refers to the expression emotional journalist, as his work tends to document the discoveries of the heart and dreams of adventure, using poetry, songwriting, and snapshots of photography. Take it away, Charlie.
Thank you. I'd like to first send my gratitude for this opportunity. First poem I'm going to read is one called Lava Ride. It's from the beginning of a series of them that I have, but I'll just read the first one. What is this? It's been so long, and now you come gliding out, teasing me with your lack of production. Laughing at all those barkers and plastic salesmen. Tell me this is the riches. This is where it's at. But how do I believe you? When for years all you showed me were the heartbreaks of dust-covered romances, spider webs, and the works of F. Scott Fitzgerald left in attics collecting time. Streets of darkness where thieves lay waiting in abandoned doorways and empty alleys, waiting for the innocent young to stray by so they could infest them with their alcoholic diseases and carry their dreams through hot veins to hearts too tender to know life being zapped from them. The cold winds and the bite of rain along the empty trails of adventure where tomorrow's always promised more, and we're right about the wrong things. Children who think of their fathers as traveling salesmen, always on the road selling a product there is no name for, no potential customers for, but promises riches no earth could afford. And now you send me fire that boils this heart of a Cancer moon, erupting the Earth's volcanoes in a lava ride. Thank you. My second one I'm going to read here is just a really short one. It's one that the first things that I got published back in the 70s in the Iowa Poetry Anthology. It's called Young Disappointment. She was blonde, I was young. With heart beating and palms sweating, I summoned the courage to say, hello. She said hi and kept walking. All right. This one is called The Highway in the Desert. A white line bounces my mind down an unending black path, intermittently hypnotizing the makings of thought into a blank canvas. With no inclination of being filled, molded, or led into a future presentation of questions, answers, or premonitions of what the next moment might bring. My hands have long dropped from the clockwork grip of guiding my journey. Lazy as I sit back watching the film playing in the changing lights of the fire and the horizon fighting with the ensuing darkness reflecting on the screens of wispy horsetails racing across the blue and dotted cacti standing amongst the tumbling tumbleweeds. The emptiness is so full, quiet, roaring in my ears and my heart beating melodically. Serenity exploding deep into the crevices of burdened shards of broken expectations and unfilled dreams. I jump as a blur of fur races through my vision, breaking my trance of frozen decisions. In the presence of now, the path before me, a highway in the desert. Okay, I'm just going to finish up with one more. It's one I wrote for Poetry Day. Today's the day to make words sublime, dance cross page, line to line, to celebrate the complex prime of simple beats and twirling rhyme. Today's the day to kiss a broom, prance with it across the room, or it may be fitting to address a groom to scrape away my shadow moon. Oh, these dishes stacked high in the kitchen, or call a friend I am missing. But the lake calls, I could go fishing. Avoidance, oh, how distracted I find my mission. So how shall I make today a shrine and honor how perhaps the words combined often stop my heart's decline, toasting the poet in his mind. Is that good?
Did you want to read one more, Charlie?
I could. Let me see if I can dig it up here. Melancholia. It's really contagious. Branches off into sorrow. Is always startling but true. Wakes you to the realization that you have done nothing for days except for let the world go by. And then sadness creeps in. Self-pity too sometimes. It breaks the hardest mental wall and pushes tears from your eyes. Part of the process is a takeaway, a bitter sweat. Oops, this isn't even mine. I'm sorry. I just opened up. I thought I had them all in the same thing. This one I know is right. I stopped along a word. I stopped along a word bleeding on the page where all I could see was your eyes. I stumbled across a note screaming on dirty strings where all I could feel was your heart. I was captured by a photo melting across the sunrise where all I understood was your plight. I was sunken in this moment, grabbing my awareness, realizing I stood at the pulpit. What will I do with it? My apologies to George Colburn. I had it in the wrong file.
I don't think George would have minded if you read it, but
I
thanks
probably
for all you
not.
did. Next up, we have Thomas R. Smith. Thomas is a writer, essayist, editor, and teacher living in Western Wisconsin. He has published 10 books of poetry, most recently Medicine Year, and edited 4 books, including Airmail, The Letters of Robert Bly and Thomas Transtromer. His first prose book, Poetry on the Side of Nature, Writing the Nature Poem as an Act of Survival, was published in 2022 by Red Dragonfly Press. He lives in River Falls, Wisconsin on the Kinnickinnick River. Take it away, Thomas.
Yeah, that's Kinnickinnick. Kinnickinnick. It's red willow. It's the stuff that they used to make the smoking mixture from back in Native American days. So I'm going to read some. I'm going to read some October poems here, mostly. I think this is called Trio. There's a straight line from Mars down to the cricket song on the corner. Mars, lone red flashpoint in the early October evening, a world apart. Unseen cricket making solitary sounds in the long grass, in the dark. And I, third point on the triangle, measuring my distance from both. What is it then between us? Walt asked famously. I wish I knew. I stand here thinking about the cricket, its rickety insistence, the planet's steady point of light, the bluer light we make in space. Cricket, are you hopeful or merely persistent? Planets die too. What is it then between us three amigos, worlds apart? Trio. Thank you. I'm going to flash back here to September quickly with a prose poem. It's called Sympathy for the Wasps. The woman at the extension office says that the 24 or so wasps clustered under the roof eave of our porch are starving. They die off, she tells me, except for the overwintering queen, who starts it all up again in the spring. They've long ago exhausted the small supply of wasp honey that fed them in the comb and grope feebly together as though blind, searching for sugar, using up their energy reserves because it's September and the sweets of earth die back too. In full sun, they fan out on the joist, not venturing far from each other, seldom flying. Sometimes one flexes angular wings, as if uncertainly testing the air, then retracts them close to its spindle body. Sometimes one looks down at me, returns my stare, antenna twitching. At dusk, they crowd together in a tight clump to conserve heat, withdraw into a shadowy depression. By day, they browse the painted wood, dulled by weather, dust, accumulation of tattered spider webs, bits of captured debris. The low sun is bright and cool. The wasps are remarkably unaggressive. We have coexisted peacefully at close quarters for half a month. In warm hours, a few still whirl up against the south side of the house like wild flung honey. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, October. Well, if you're of my generation, the the death of the death of John Lennon was an important event back in 1980. He was 40 years old when that happened. So now it's been more than that since he's died. October 9th was his birthday. It was his 84th. I wrote this on his 80th. And it's called John Restored. And I have to say there's a little spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen the movie yesterday and you still plan to, you might want to plug your ears for part of this poem. It's called John Restored. Well, John, you'd have turned 80 today. As fine a fall day as we see in these parts, a day to make one pity the dead, missing this splurge of heavenly gold. What are we to make of this birthday that 40 years ago became an anniversary? What's to say that hasn't been said already? Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. Is that what's left with us? Your death resists sense, and for that matter, so does your life. It was a gift, and gifts aren't to be made sense of. They're to be accepted. Just as faithfully as the unseen immune defenses of our bodies, your songs will go on protecting and healing. They're part of our spiritual body now, the world immune system that is always moving to act against threats of the times. Near the end of the film yesterday, that fantasy of a world that has lost its collective memory of the Beatles, the protagonist drives out to a cottage near the sea, presumably near Liverpool. The camera pans slowly past windows, tantalizes with glimpses of oddly familiar drawings inside. An artist lives here. When our hero knocks, the aging man who comes to the door is unmistakably John Lennon, an older John, who by being forgotten by the world has been therefore allowed to live. That moment shocks the film deeper, touches the longing we feel for the lost good to return. And here he is, straight out of that heart of longing. John restored to the elder we dream he might actually have become, seasoned by the wisdom of that half lifetime taken from him. No way to know who he'd finally turned out, what gifts still to be given from new self-knowledge. Who knows where they'd have gone together? Who knows what future they'd have crafted? Two artists who'd mastered the everyday art of starting over. On this day, when John Ono Lennon, you'd have turned 80, we can only imagine. Nothing. I got time for one more, I believe. Okay. Let's see, excuse me. Okay. It's another October poem. That's another prose poem. It's called, excuse me. It's called, wow, Old Dregs. There. It's called Geese Maneuvers. At the cross quarter, clouds decide how much brightness to allot to Earth. Some light manages to straggle through, silver the river on which hundreds of Canada geese gather. Each is a dark Arthurian craft, magicked here by the primordial imagination of the universe. They are in a state of dynamic flow. One moment, their slender, proud silhouettes rest at anchor, then become a field in motion toward a common point. From relative calm, an agitation builds. From quiet, a surround of voices, noisy as a canyon full of barking dogs. All face in the same direction until, given some crucial signal, their clamor reaches a furious pitch and they cyclone upward, tearing off pieces of the river with their wings and feet. Squadrons appear to rehearse migratory protocols, flock downstream, only to circle back again to the settling water. It's a mystery who commands these maneuvers and how others know to join. I'm ready. Me too. I'm in. Let's go. It can be hypnotic, this surging energy, rhythmic as the breathing of an immense lung. We could stand all day and watch their comings and goings, tumultuous departures and returns, to the endlessly accommodating river. That's that Kinnickinnick River I was telling you about.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Laura Hansen. She's the author of the Stevens Poetry Manuscript Prize Collection, Midnight River. Her most recent books are Waiting Rooms, My Breast Cancer Journey in Poems, and The Night Journey Stories in Poems. Laura is a two-time grand prize winner in the League of Minnesota Poets annual poetry contest and a three-time Five Wings Art Council grant recipient. She is on the Lifetime Arts Creative Aging roster of teaching artists and has served on the boards of the Great River Arts and the Five Wings Arts Council. Published in numerous regional journals, Laura has judged poetry contests for Central Lakes College, the Talking Stick Literary Journal, and Brainerd's Writers Alliance, among others. A graduate of Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, Laura owned an independent bookstore for 20 years and now works at a local library. Let's hear Laura.
All righty, can I be heard? Okay. I have a little bit shorter poems, so I'm going to try to cram in a few extras. I don't like a lot of exposition before or after a poem or in the middle, so I'm just going to roll with them. This is all really new work. Poem with no end in sight. When I travel to you, I go miles out of my way, tires stirring up dust devils as I go. The back seat fills with the debris of survival, rattling empties, crackling chip bags and candy wrappers, soft, doughy mounds of tissues. There's a worn map on the floor that I don't know how to refold, a GPS, but I forgot the cord. The car disassembles as the miles roll on. A broken mirror falls off, and then a bum tire. The bare rim sparks along the night road like an orgy of fireflies. The muffler drags but holds on for now. It's been so long since I stopped. I'm no longer sure where I am or where I'm going or why. I follow you like a hallucination. You are a desert mirage, an abandoned roadside attraction. I've been traveling for years in this westerly direction, gone gray behind the wheel, but there is no turning back now. I've taken to the road in search of you, no matter how lonely, no matter how far. And that's a poem with no end in sight. This one, you like this? This one's titled After Reading Thomas R. Smith's Storm Island. After reading Thomas R. Smith's Storm Island, I want to write about heavy things, solid things, things that hug the ground, clog our veins, like the stripped bare tree that lodged itself in the middle of the river last year and remains like an artist's sculpture. Wishbone arms rising into the blue sky by day, backlit by modernist orange sunsets at dusk. Torso sunk solidly into sandbar, breast carving awake in the water, claiming its place with drama and gravitas. I want to know the weight of things, feel the foot lodged between stones, ankle twisting, body torquing, to be the root still in the ground when all around the forest is loosening its grip, tree after tree falling. This is called Rapidan, and you may recall these events. Rapidan. We lay stones along the edge of the garden, but the grass burrows under, threads its fibrous roots into the planting beds. Grass rises, first green, then tall, burnished, tasseled between the daylilies. In the mown grass outside the stone circle, Tiny Asiatic lilies are thriving. We mow around them. In another river town south of here, the stacked stones of a dam are holding off a flood of June rain. Sticks and logs and debris pile up along its upper edge. Water, heavier than one would ever imagine, surges toward the shoreline, mows its way through the deep weave of grass, carves dark, loamy soil into a new raceway, carrying along the remains of a house it captured along the way. Ah, the best laid plans. This is called staying within the lines. I think we always look around once in a while and think what might have been or who we might have been in different circumstances. And that kind of is where this goes. Staying within the lines. What probably should have happened early on, what would have been nice, is if the line drawing of myself had been handed off to another child, a wildly creative child with ADHD maybe, whose mother never taught them to color within the lines or to match their shoes to their clothes. And that child would have colored me in with every crayon in the box. My yellow hair mixed with purple, orange ears, screaming pink nose, blotchy black fingers reaching off the page. What if that child, that not me child, had let the crayons run off the page and onto the table and up the walls? The new me would be everywhere, not just contained in this basic rectangle of meanness, not curtailed by the edge of the page or any other edge or border. As crayon, I could melt down, flow, climb walls, spill into the next room. I could not be erased. So this is, I did another after poem for Thomas, After Mary Oliver. Let your soul run rampant through the field. Anything else is just dying. See the dog who sees the squirrel, nose pressed to the glass, ears pricked high, tail tapping out a mad rhythm? Open the door for him. Release his madly beating heart. Even if he runs into the street, gets hit by a car in his state of crazed wanting, his ill-advised scheme, he will be more alive in those brief seconds than you have been in your whole safe and diligent life. Whatever makes your heart beat like a dog panting wildly at that door, be about that. The thrill of the chase, the eye-popping delight. Why wait? Why wait? How am I doing? About partway? I've got a poem that I wrote last year at the League of Minnesota Poets Fall Conference during a Sun Yong-shin Divination Poetics Workshop. That's a mouthful. And it was using a line, the weather was inside her eyes. And I thought I'd share it because we're very quickly, first weekend of November, coming up on the League of Minnesota Poets Conference, where there's lots of similar engaging workshops that people can sign up for. And you can look it up, the League of Minnesota Poets. Spellcasting. The weather was inside her eyes, poor wild thing, abandoned by the road or lost, without name. All the snow was there on her muzzle, clouds danced in her eyes. It must have been years since she was inside. Fur long yet matted short, clumped like handfuls of snow. I pulled her close to thaw her heart, to warm my own. The weather was inside me now, all her skittish fears, her tremblings. The weather blew and scraped at my skin. I tore at my tangled hair, wanting nothing more than to be let out, back to the silver skies, back to the den in the underbrush. The weather was in my eyes, wild and witchy, and I crouch low, my tumbleweed companion by my side. Beware, the weather may take hold of you and send you off on roads where no rescuers pass by. And this is my last one. It's the longest one. Do I have time for it? I think so. This is called, and I'm a terrible reviser when it comes to poetry. I get them on the page and they get stuck, but I do constantly change titles. Titles are so hard. This one is currently named The Forest Lover. I don't know that it'll stay that way. So, as it is now, The Forest Lover. I am sorry I cannot offer you homes as sunny as daffodils, where all you need is a walk in the woods to feel fine again. Don't get me wrong, I love a walk in the woods, or a day by the lake, or a long drive to nowhere. But even in the woods, leaves fall, clump together, rot. Even at the lake, dead wood and dead fish tangled together at the shore. We once took a walk off the beaten path, as they say, and found a vulture devouring the carcass of a deer, leaping away with a clatter of morbid wings, swooping back like a coven of crows, all stench and beak and claw. Things die. Days can be good or bad or both, and that is a kind of joy in itself, the coexistence of the tearing down and building up of life. We live in the midst of these ecosystems, add our own voice and vice to the mix. The edges of our bodies are porous, continuous extensions of pond and pool and river and tree and root. We too are fish. We too are tree. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, we will walk across concrete, under steel-beamed roofs, and pull synthetic blankets to our chins, and dream of the death of fish, of our desperate wish for trees, for flood and storm to make us feel alive again, free. So here is my happy poem. We live on a screen of artificial intelligence, where every photo is a lie, has been amplified, cropped, retouched. The forest is miles away, but even at this distance, we can see the tops are yellowing. Your sanctuary is already dying. Hold your poems to your chest like a shield. Thank you, guys.
That's good advice. Hold your poems like a chest. Shield. Thanks, Laura. Thanks
Thank you.
all the poets for reading tonight. Thanks to the audience for watching. Thanks Valerie Lockhart and Minnesota Television Network for putting this on. Have a wonderful evening.